My family was ready to send me to prison to save the golden child. You know that feeling when you're watching a perfectly running program suddenly start throwing errors? That slow motion disaster where you can see every line of bad code executing, but you're powerless to stop it? That was my life 3 years ago. I used to think I had it all figured out. Digital architect at one of those fintech companies where they have kombucha on tap and meditation rooms nobody uses. 6 figures, stock options, the whole Silicon Valley starter pack minus the actual Silicon Valley. We were based in Chicago. I genuinely believed in the system. Work hard, write clean code, get rewarded. Simple as that. Life was just another program. Follow the documentation, avoid the bugs, and everything compiles perfectly. God, I was naive. Looking back now, sitting in my one-bedroom apartment that smells perpetually like someone else's cooking, I can almost laugh at that version of me. Almost. Sarah was everything I wasn't, where I saw the world in binary. She painted it in colors I didn't know existed. Marketing director at a nonprofit. The kind of person who could make you care about things you never thought about. She had this laugh that could fill a room, this energy that made every party better just by her walking in. She also had $87,000 in student loans hanging around her neck like a digital chain. She used to joke about it, but you could see the weight in her eyes. "You know what's funny, Alex?" she'd say, staring at her laptop screen showing the loan portal. "I pay more in interest each month than some people pay in rent. It's like I'm renting my education, except I'll never actually own it." Then she'd close the laptop and smile that made me forget about algorithms for a while. But hey, at least I'm starting the game at negative level, right? Nowhere to go but up. My family was, well, think of them as a corporate structure. Dad was the CEO, retired from running a logistics company. The kind of guy who called dinner conversations family sinks without a trace of irony. Mom was HR, always smoothing things over, making sure everyone felt heard even when nobody was actually listening. My younger sister played the role of the intern, observing everything, contributing little, waiting for a moment to climb the ladder. And then there was Stephen, my older brother, the golden child, the star trader who worked at one of those firms where they wear Patagonia vests unironically and talk about disrupting traditional finance, while essentially doing the same thing bankers have done for centuries, just with better apps. Stephen was Dad's blue chip stock, the sure bet, the one who delivered consistent returns. Me? I was a utility stock, reliable, boring, necessary, but never exciting. The night everything changed started like a celebration. Family dinner at my parents' place. The dining room that looked like a West Elm catalog had exploded. Stephen stood up during dessert, tapping his wine glass like he was about to announce an IPO. "I have something special for you, too," he said, looking at Sarah and me. His smile was so bright you could have used it to mine Bitcoin. He pulled out an envelope, one of those thick, expensive ones that rich people use for wedding invitations. He handed it to Sarah. She opened it slowly, confused. Then her face changed. I watched her eyes scan the paper once, twice, 3 times. Her hand started shaking. "This is... Stephen, this is my loan statement." But it says... She couldn't finish. Tears were already rolling down her cheeks. "Paid in full," Stephen said, his chest puffing out like a peacock, discovering its feathers for the first time. "Consider it an early wedding gift." The room exploded. Mom was crying. Dad was actually showing emotion. Sarah was sobbing into Stephen's shoulder. And me? I sat there, watching the performance, feeling something cold crawl up my spine. Because I knew Stephen. I knew his salary, his bonus structure, his spending habits. The math didn't add up. The code didn't compile. But I kept my mouth shut. You don't debug a miracle in front of the people who need to believe in it. You don't pull back the curtain when everyone's enjoying the show. So I smiled, shook his hand, let Sarah cry tears of joy on my shoulder, and file my suspicions away in a mental folder marked to do. Investigate later. 3 weeks. That's how long the illusion lasted. 3 weeks before Stephen showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, looking like someone had forced him to read his own source code, and he discovered it was all spaghetti. The next morning, I found myself in Dad's home office. You know those scenes in movies where the mob boss calls you in for a conversation? This was like that, but with better coffee and worse intentions. Stephen looked small, deflated, like a startup after the VC money runs out. Dad sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, full crisis management mode. Mom stood by the window, not looking at any of us. The SEC is investigating, Dad said, cutting straight to the point. No buffer, no warm-up. Stephen made some aggressive trades. Used information that wasn't exactly public. Insider trading. My brother, the golden boy, was just another cliche in a vest. But it got worse. So much worse. The money for Sarah's loans, Stephen said, his voice barely above a whisper. It came from those trades. If they dig deep enough, they'll find it. They'll connect it to her. To you. The room got very quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before a server crashes and takes the whole system down with it. Dad leaned forward. We need damage control. Stephen's looking at serious time if this goes to trial. But you, Alex, you have skills. You understand systems, traces, digital footprints. I knew where this was going before he even finished. You want me to make it look like I did it? Not exactly, Dad said, and for a moment I thought maybe I was wrong. We want you to make it look like someone did it to Stephen. A hack. External breach. You were always good at security stuff. This is just reverse engineering. I laughed. Actually laughed. You want to take the fall for federal crimes so Stephen can keep playing Wolf of Wall Street. 2 years maximum, Dad said, like he was negotiating a cell phone contract. With your clean record, probably just probation. Stephen's looking at 10 to 15. This isn't about favoritism, Alex. It's about minimizing total family exposure. Total family exposure. He actually said that, like we were a portfolio that needed rebalancing. I was already shaking my head, already standing up to leave, when Sarah spoke. I hadn't even noticed her come in. Alex. Just my name, but the way she said it made me stop. They'll freeze Stephen's assets. All of them, including the money he gave me. They'll say I was complicit. My job, my career, my future, gone. Not because of something I did, but because I accepted a gift I thought was legitimate. She walked over, took my hands. Her eyes were red, puffy. She'd been crying. I'm not asking you to save Stephen. I'm asking you to save us. Our future. The life we planned. She said us, but all I heard was me. The thing about being a developer is you're trained to fix problems. See a bug, patch it. System failing, restore it. It's hardwired into us. And standing there, watching the woman I loved face the destruction of everything she'd worked for, watching my family look at me with desperate eyes. I did what I always did. I tried to fix it. Okay, I said. 1 word. 2 syllables. The worst get commit of my life. The plan was supposed to be simple. I'd take responsibility for a security breach that led to unauthorized trades. Claim I was trying to prove a point about vulnerabilities. Stupid, reckless, but not malicious. My lawyer, paid for by Dad, of course, assured me it would be a slap on the wrist. Probation, some fines, maybe community service teaching kids to code, or something equally ironic. The trial was a blur. My lawyer, who looked like he graduated from law school that morning, presented my case with all the passion of someone reading a software manual. The prosecutor, meanwhile, turned me into some kind of cyber-terrorist mastermind. Every certification I had, every security conference I'd attended, every GitHub contribution, all evidence of my sophisticated criminal capabilities. 2 years probation, $50,000 in fines, a felony conviction that would follow me like a corrupted database I could never rebuild. But the real sentence came after. The first message from Sarah came 3 days after the verdict. I need time to process all of this. Please understand. The calls to my parents went straight to voicemail. Their voicemail got full, then disconnected. The final nail came from my sister. A text brief and brutal. Dad says you've been trying to reach out. Stop. You're a written-off asset. Steven needs our support right now, not your whining. You're a written-off asset. Like I was a bad investment they needed to remove from their books. Like I was a line of code they commented out and would eventually delete. My company fired me. Obviously, no fintech firm wants a convicted felon handling their security. My LinkedIn became a ghost town. Recruiters who used to blow up my inbox suddenly developed amnesia about my existence. 3 months after the trial, I stood in my empty apartment. Everything worth selling had been sold to pay the lawyers and fines. My furniture had little yellow tags with prices, like a garage sale for my entire life. My phone sat silent on the counter. No calls, no texts, no notifications. Even the spam had stopped coming, like I had been deleted from every database that mattered. I picked up the phone, scrolled through my contacts. Hundreds of names. College friends, co-workers, extended family. People I'd met at conferences, people who'd said, we should get coffee sometime. I could call any of them, tell them my side, try to explain. But I didn't, because I finally understood something. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a liability, a risk to be managed, a bad investment to be written off. I was a device disconnected from the network. No signal, no connection, no purpose. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the electricity humming in the walls. Somewhere outside, the world kept running its program, executing its functions, processing its data. But I wasn't part of that system anymore. I had been deleted. After everything collapsed, I entered what I now call my standby mode. You know when your computer goes into hibernation? Still technically alive, but not really doing anything? That was me for the next 6 months. The job interviews were the worst part. I'd polish my resume, put on my one remaining decent shirt, and walk into those glass offices with their ping-pong tables and motivational posters. Everything would go great until the question came up. We'll need to run a background check. Is there anything we should know about? The temperature in the room would drop 10 degrees a moment. I said, I have a felony conviction. You could actually see the recalculation happening in their eyes, like watching a program crash in real time. The rest of the interview became performance art, them pretending to still be interested, me pretending I didn't notice them pretending. After burning through my savings and selling everything worth more than a cup of coffee, I found myself signing a lease at a place called Oasis Apartments. The irony wasn't lost on me. If this was an oasis, then the Sahara must be paradise. The building looked like it had been designed by someone who'd only heard descriptions of architecture, but had never actually seen any. Brown brick, brown doors, brown carpet that might have been a different color once upon a time. My studio was on the 3rd floor, 300 square feet of compressed despair. The smell hit you first, a cocktail of mold, instant noodles, and whatever the guy next door was cooking that definitely wasn't legal in most states. The overhead light flickered constantly, like it was sending out an SOS in Morse code. Dit, 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 da, da, dit, dit, dit. Save our souls. I'd gone from admin privileges in my own life to safe mode. Minimal functions, maximum depression. The only JavaScript I ran now was getting out of bed, and even that code was buggy. The other residents of Oasis were a collection of system errors. The lady in 3B who had conversations with her cats. Loud, two-way conversations where she'd pause for their responses. The couple in 3D whose relationship troubleshooting involved a lot of yelling and occasionally throwing things. The guy in 3F who I'm pretty sure was cooking something that would interest the DEA. And then there was Mr. Winters in 3C. Winters was what happened when you left a computer programmer in the wilderness for too long. Skinny to the point of being two-dimensional, aged somewhere between 40 and 70, with eyes that didn't quite focus on you, but seemed to be reading something floating just behind your head. He wore the same army surplus jacket every day, even when it hit 90 degrees. The jacket had more pockets than a pool table, each one stuffed with papers, electronics, and God knows what else. The other residents treated him like legacy software. Nobody knew exactly what he did, but everyone was afraid to interact with him in case he crashed. He'd mutter about digital ghosts and corporate surveillance states, and the watchers and the wires. Standard conspiracy theory stuff. but delivered with the intensity of someone presenting a doctoral thesis. I'd successfully avoided him for 3 weeks until the router incident. I was coming back from another failed interview. This one at a startup that lost interest the moment I mentioned my record when I saw Winters in the hallway. He had an ancient Linksys router, the kind that belonged in a museum, and he was hitting it with a screwdriver, not even trying to unscrew anything. Just hitting it, like he was performing some kind of technological exorcism. The engineer in me couldn't stand it. It was like watching someone try to perform surgery with a chainsaw. I heard myself speaking before my brain could stop my mouth. You know there are better ways to reset that thing, right? Winters spun around so fast, I thought he might fall over. His eyes narrowed, scanning me like antivirus software. Who sent you? You one of their techs? Here to install more tracking? I actually laughed. First time in months. Trust me, man. The system has zero interest in me right now. I'm about as threatening as a floppy disk. But seriously, stop hitting that router. You're hurting my soul. He studied me for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he stepped aside and gestured at the router. Fine. You fix it then, if you're so smart. It took me exactly 3 minutes. Loose Ethernet connection, outdated firmware, and someone had somehow set the admin password to password 123, then forgot it. Amateur hour stuff. But when that little green light came on and stayed solid, Winters looked at me like I just raised a dead. He disappeared into his apartment without a word. I figured that was it. Just another weird Oasis moment. But then he came back with 2 mugs of the worst instant coffee I'd ever tasted. Folgers crystals that had probably expired during the dot-com boom, mixed with tap water that our building's pipes had given a distinctive metallic flavor. We stood there in the hallway, drinking terrible coffee in silence. It was the beginning of the strangest friendship I've ever had. Though friendship might be too strong a word. We were more like 2 broken programs that found a way to run in parallel. Over the next few months, we developed a routine. I'd help him with his technical projects, setting up VPNs, encrypting his hard drives, creating what he called his digital fortress. In exchange, he'd share his philosophy of living off the grid while being on it. Money isn't real, he told me one evening while I was installing TOR on his laptop. It's just trust with numbers attached. They want us to believe it's solid, like gold in a vault somewhere. But it's nothing. Electrons. The moment people stop believing, poof, it vanishes. That's why I don't trust anyone who says trust us. First rule of security, kid. The moment someone says you can trust them, you definitely can't. Another time, while I was teaching him about password managers. You want to know the best way to hide online? Don't try to be invisible. Invisible stands out. Be noise. Be chaos. Nobody analyzes static. They just turn the channel. Winters had been in IT back in the day, before whatever happened that made him retreat to Oasis. He never talked about it directly, but I pieced together bits. Corporate whistleblower, maybe, or just someone who saw too much of how the sausage was made and decided to go vegetarian. The thing about Winters was he never asked about my past. Never wondered why someone with my obvious skills was living in Oasis, fixing computers for $20 a pop. Only once did he acknowledge it, and even then, indirectly. System chewed you up and spat you out, didn't it? He said one day, not even looking up from the circuit board he was soldering. I can tell. You got that look. Like a variable that got defined but never called. Suspended in memory. Taking up space, but never executing. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. It's fine, he continued, still focused on his work. Best things I ever found were in the garbage. One man's deprecated function is another man's core algorithm. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't friendship. It was just existence. 2 bugs in the system, hiding in the same bad sector. But for the first time since my life had crashed, I didn't feel completely offline. Winters taught me things. Not just technical stuff, but survival philosophy. How to live when the world has marked you as malware. How to find meaning when your purpose has been deleted. How to exist in the spaces between legitimate programs. You're not living, he told me once. You're persisting. Like a background process everyone forgot was running. That's not necessarily bad. Some of the most important programs run in the background. Nobody notices them until they stop working. We went on like this for months. Our weird little protocol of mutual assistance. I fix his tech, he fixed my perspective. Not enough to make me whole again, but enough to keep me from completely corrupting. Then came that Tuesday morning in October. I woke up to noise in the hallway. Not the usual Oasis noise, domestic disputes, drunk stumbling. Someone's music played too loud. This was different. Official noise. The kind that comes with uniforms and procedures. I cracked my door open. 2 cops, 2 EMTs, and our building manager Stan, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. They were all clustered around 3C. Winter's door was open. I stepped into the hallway. What's going on? Stan shuffled over, avoiding eye contact like it was a terms of service agreement. Mr. Winters, he passed away last night. In his sleep. Heart attack, they think. The words didn't process immediately. Like when you try to run a program that's missing a crucial library. Error. Cannot compute. He was pretty isolated, Stan continued, still studying his shoes. You were the only one who ever visited him. Far as I could tell. Did he have any family we should contact? I shook my head. Winters had no one. Just like me. The EMTs were bringing out the stretcher now. A black bag, zipped up, anonymous. The final logout. No save state, no backup, no recovery possible. Just terminated. I stood there in that brown hallway, fluorescent lights flickering their eternal SOS, watching them take away the only person who treated me like a human being in the past year. Not a criminal, not a failure, not a cautionary tale. Just another broken program trying to keep running. The other residents peeked out of their doors, whispered each other, then retreated back into their units. Show's over. Nothing to see. Just another bug fixed in the Oasis system. Stan was saying something about Winter's belongings, about next of kin, about procedures. But I wasn't listening. I was looking at that closed door, 3C, and feeling something I hadn't felt since my family abandoned me. Loss. Real loss. The kind that doesn't come with error messages or debugging options. The kind you can't patch or update or restore from a previous version. My only connection had been terminated. No warning, no proper shutdown sequence. Just gone. And I was alone again. Truly alone. A ghost process in a system that had no use for me. And now, no one who even knew I was still running. 3 days after they took Winters away, I got a call that changed everything. Not immediately. Real life doesn't work like that. It started small, like a memory leak that eventually crashes the whole system. The lawyer sounded bored, like he was reading a grocery list. Mr. Alexander Chen, I'm calling regarding the estate of Mr. Harold Winters. You've been named as a sole beneficiary. I almost laughed. Estate? Winters lived in the same crappy building I did. His estate was probably worth less than a decent graphics card. He left you all his personal belongings, the lawyer continued, stifling a yawn. There's quite a bit of electronic equipment. Also a laptop, though it appears to be encrypted. Probably just sentimental value, but it's all yours. We'll need you to sign some papers. Sentimental value. Right. Like anything in Winter's life had been sentimental. The man treated emotions like viruses, something to quarantine and eliminate. Stan let me into 3C the next day. The smell hit me first. Old electronics and instant coffee, like a Radio Shack that had been converted into a Dunkin' Donuts. The apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a paranoid former programmer. Towers of old computers, boxes of cables that probably hadn't been manufactured since the 90s, stacks of programming books with titles like COBOL for the Modern Age, which was neither modern nor aged well. And there, on a desk made from a door and 2 sawhorses, sat Winter's laptop, a ThinkPad from 2015 covered in stickers from security conferences, and one that just said, "Trust no one in Comic Sans," because even paranoia could have a sense of humor apparently. I took everything back to my apartment, Took 3 trips and a lot of confused looks from neighbors who probably thought I was starting an electronics museum. Then I sat down with that laptop and tried to crack it open. 2 days. 48 hours of trying every password combination I could think of, every conspiracy theory winners had mentioned, every significant date in computer history, every quote he'd ever said about the surveillance state, the corporate oligarchy, the digital revolution. Nothing worked. I was ready to throw the thing against a wall when I remembered something Winters had said once while I was setting up his encrypted drives. Everyone's looking for complex answers, but the truth is always simple and stupid. The best place to hide something is in plain sight, because people are too smart to look there. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. No way. It couldn't be that simple. I typed password 123. The screen unlocked. I stared at the desktop for a full minute, not believing it. The paranoid security expert, the man who encrypted his grocery list, had protected his laptop with the most basic password in existence. It was either the dumbest thing I'd ever seen or the most brilliant. The desktop was mostly empty. A few folders, some text files, and one application that didn't have an icon, just a black square labeled wallet. My heart started racing. I knew what that meant. I'd helped enough crypto bros recover their lost Bitcoin to recognize a wallet application. I clicked it, expecting maybe a few $100, maybe 1,000 if Winters had been lucky. The balance showed $52,847. I actually fell off my chair. Not metaphorically. I literally fell backward and hit the floor. $52,000. After months of eating ramen and wondering if I'd have to sell my kidney to make rent. I was looking at more money than I'd had in my entire savings account before everything went to hell. I sat on that floor laughing, then crying, then both at the same time, probably looking like I'd finally snapped. "You crazy old bastard," I said to the empty room. "Your final prank is worth more than my entire career." I thought that was it. The end of the quest. Winters had left me his Bitcoin stash. Probably mine back when you could do it with a decent GPU, and nobody knew these things would be worth more than a car. Time to cash out, pay off debts, maybe actually eat something that wasn't freeze-dried. But grief makes you stupid. Or maybe it's validation that does it. After months of being treated like human malware, suddenly having money made me feel like I mattered again. Like I had worth. Like I could prove to everyone who'd written me off that I wasn't just some written-off asset. So I did the stupidest thing possible. I texted Sarah. It had been over a year since her last message, but the anger was still fresh, fermented into something bitter and poisonous. My thumbs moved before my brain could stop them. "Remember when you said your student loans were like starting at negative level? Just inherited enough to pay them off again." Funny how the universe works. The only person who actually gave a damn about me left me more than my loving family ever did. The moment I hit send, I knew I'd screwed up. It was like pushing bad code production. You know it's wrong the second it's too late to stop it. She responded within an hour. "That's wonderful, Alex. I'm happy for you." That should have been the end of it. But I knew Sarah. That wasn't her writing style. Too formal, too careful. She'd shown them the message. I just sent up a flare signal to the exact people I should have been avoiding. 2 days later, they showed up at my door. All of them. The whole family unit. Like a hostile takeover in person. Dad in his golf clothes, Mom in her yoga outfit, Stephen in his startup casual, and Sarah in what I used to call her nonprofit ninja outfit. Professional but approachable. They looked absolutely ridiculous in the hallway of Oasis Apartments. Like someone had photoshopped a country club into a crime scene. The contrast was so absurd I almost laughed. Dad didn't bother with pleasantries. "Alex, we heard about your good fortune. We're happy for you." Happy, right? They looked about as happy as a server crash on Black Friday. "Stephen's been working on a new venture," Dad continued, walking into my apartment without being invited. The others followed, their eyes scanning my sparse living space with barely concealed disgust. Revolutionary fintech platform. But you know how these things are, always need seed funding. I looked at Stephen. He couldn't even meet my eyes. Still the same coward who'd let me take the fall for his crimes. The family should support each other, Mom added, her voice doing that thing where she pretended to be nurturing but was really just manipulating, especially after everything we've been through together. Together, as if we'd been through anything together, as if they hadn't ghosted me the moment the gavel came down. Sarah stayed quiet, but her hand kept fidgeting with her engagement ring, a ring I didn't recognize, bigger than the one I'd given her, probably Stephen's money, or whoever she'd moved on with while I was rotting in judicial purgatory. How much? I asked, cutting through their performance. Dad smiled, that CEO smile that many thought he'd already won. Just a small investment. $50,000 would give you a good stake in. No. The word came out calm, steady, like clean code. No bugs, no hesitation, perfectly executed. Alex. Stephen finally spoke up, his voice wheedling. Come on, man. We're family. After everything I did for you, everything you did to me, I corrected, and no, this money isn't for you. It's payment for a lesson I learned the hard way. Never trust someone who's already sold you out once. Dad's face turned red. Mom looked shocked. Sarah seemed like she wanted to disappear into the floor. But Stephen got angry. That's not fair, he shouted. If it wasn't for me, you'd never have ended up here, never met that old freak, never gotten this money. I basically gave you this opportunity. The audacity of it was almost impressive, like a virus claiming credit for making your computer run better. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. All of you. Don't come back. Don't call. Don't text. As far as I'm concerned, you're deprecated code, obsolete and removed from my system. They left, throwing threats about lawyers and family obligations over their shoulders. Dad muttered something about me being ungrateful. Mom cried, but they were performance tears, the kind she deployed at charity events. Sarah paused at the door, looked like she wanted to say something, then thought better of it. Good. There was nothing left to say. After they left, I sat in my apartment feeling both vindicated and empty. I'd stood up to them, finally, but the money suddenly felt heavier, like it came with responsibilities I didn't understand yet. That's when I decided to go through Winter's stuff more carefully. Not the laptop, the physical things. The old hardware he'd hoarded like a digital dragon. Most of it was junk, ancient graphics cards, dead hard drives, motherboard from the Paleolithic era of computing. But then I found something interesting, an old server power supply unit from the mid-90s. Completely dead, not even worth scrap. But scratched into the metal casing was a message. Real power isn't where everyone looks. Classic Winters. Even his garbage had riddles. Out of curiosity more than anything, I unscrewed the casing. Inside, where the capacitor should have been, someone had carved out a hiding spot. And in that spot was a piece of paper, yellow with age, with a single line. S/N 369 XYZ000. A serial number. But for what? I spent the next 3 days going through every single piece of equipment, looking for matching serial numbers. It was meditation through tedium, giving my mind something to do besides replay the confrontation with my family. Finally, buried under a stack of old modems, I found it. A U.S. Robotics 56K modem, the kind that made those sounds like R2, D2 having a breakdown. The serial number matched, except the XYZ000 part was the actual number, 369-421-000. I opened it up, expecting another note. Instead, I found something that made my hands shake, a hardware crypto wallet. The old kind, before they got all sleek and user-friendly. This thing looked like a USB stick that had been through a blender and reconstructed by someone who'd only heard descriptions of USB sticks. I plugged it into my laptop. It asked for a PIN. Of course it did, because Winters couldn't just leave me money. He had to leave me a puzzle, a test, one final debugging session from beyond the grave. I thought about every conversation we'd had, every random observation about the system, the world, the nature of trust and value. And then I remembered something he'd said one night when we were both drunk on his horrible coffee. Only once did the system give me what I wanted instead of what I deserved. January 3rd, 2009, the day Bitcoin was born. The day the little guys got a weapon against the big guys. January 3rd, 2009, the Genesis block, the first Bitcoin ever mined. I typed 03012009. The screen lit up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the balance appeared. $369 million. $369 million. I sat there staring at the number, waiting for it to change, to reveal itself as a joke, a glitch, a hallucination brought on by too much stress and instant ramen. But it stayed there, solid and real as code compiled without errors. There was a text file on the wallet. One line, money is a weapon. Never found the right war. Maybe you will. Trust no one, especially yourself. H.W. Harold Winters. The paranoid old man who lived in 3C, who wore army surplus and ranted about digital surveillance, had been sitting on a fortune that could buy a small country, and he lived in oasis apartments, drinking terrible coffee, fixing ancient routers, dying alone. Because money wasn't the point. It never had been. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't cash out everything at once. Didn't buy a Lamborghini or a mansion or whatever newly rich idiots do to announce their wealth to the world. Instead, I sat with it for weeks, thinking about what Winters had said. Money is a weapon. What war was I supposed to fight? Then it hit me. Winters had been screwed by the system. Just like me, how many others were out there? How many people had been railroaded, made into scapegoats, had their lives deleted because they were convenient sacrifices? I started small. Anonymous donation to the public library's debt relief fund. The library where Winters used to spend his days reading programming manuals from the 80s. Then I set up a foundation, called it Project Genesis, after the first Bitcoin block. Official mission, providing legal and technical assistance to people wrongly accused of cybercrimes. Real mission, fighting back against a system that treats people like expendable code. I bought a house outside the city. Nothing fancy, just a place with good internet and actual walls between me and my neighbors. My biggest luxury was silence and a coffee maker that didn't require instant crystals. The family found out, of course, not the exact amount, but enough. Dad hired a private investigator who traced the foundation filing, the house purchase. Their imagination filled in the blanks, probably inflating the number with each retelling. They showed up again 6 months later. This time, they came prepared. Stephen had a whole presentation on his tablet about his new company, projected returns, market opportunities. Dad had documents about family trusts and obligations. Mom had guilt, professionally packaged and ready to deploy. But I had something better. I had the truth. You know, Stephen, I said, interrupting his pitch about disrupting the disruption industry or whatever buzzword salad he was serving. You were right about one thing. Your mistakes did lead me here, so I wanted to return the favor. I pulled out my own tablet, showed him the screen. It was a detailed forensic accounting report. Every trade Stephen had made since I took the fall. Every offshore account. Every new investor he was scamming. All documented, verified, and packaged with a bow. Winters taught me something important. I continued, watching the blood drain from Stephen's face. The system loves facts. So I hired the best forensic accountants money could buy. Turns out you never stopped, Stephen. You just got better at hiding it. Dad stood up, his face purple. You wouldn't dare. I already did. This morning, an anonymous whistleblower sent this entire file to the SEC. They were very interested, especially since the whistleblower made a small donation to their enforcement division's favorite charity. Funny how a little goodwill goes a long way. Stephen collapsed into a chair. Mom started crying, real tears this time. Sarah just stared at me like she'd never seen me before. This time, I said, standing up and walking to the window, there's no firewall, no little brother to take the fall, just you and the consequences of your actions. Dad tried threatening lawyers. Stephen tried begging. Mom tried mothering. None of it mattered. The code had already been executed. The program was running. "Winter's left me more than money," I said, still looking out the window at the setting sun, painting the sky in shades of systems shut down. "He left me purpose. He showed me that you can exist outside their system. You can be a ghost in their machine. Invisible but present. Powerless but effective." I turned back to face them one last time. "Your session has been terminated. Please don't attempt to reconnect." They left. No dramatic exit this time. Just defeated people facing the consequences they'd spent so long avoiding. That was a year ago. Stephen's awaiting trial. Dad's reputation is ruined. Mom's retreated into her charity work, pretending none of this happened. Sarah married someone else. Saw the announcement online. Good for her. Hope she found someone who could actually protect her, not just promise to. Me? I'm still here. Still running Project Genesis. We've helped dozens of people now. Kids who got railroaded for finding vulnerabilities and reporting them. Whistleblowers who got burned for doing the right thing. People like me who trusted the wrong people and paid for it. I don't advertise my wealth. Don't flaunt it. Most people who meet me think I'm just another IT guy who made some decent investments. They don't know about the 9 figures sitting in various wallets, slowly being deployed in a war against a system that treats people like disposable functions. Winters was right. Money is a weapon, but it's also a responsibility. Every dollar I spend is a choice, a line of code in a program I'm writing to debug the world, one small fix at a time. I'm a digital ghost now, not the kind that haunts forums or crashes systems, the kind that exists in the spaces between legitimate transactions, helping people the system has marked for deletion, invisible to those who don't need to see me, visible to those who do. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Winter sitting in his apartment, surrounded by old hardware and paranoid theories, sitting on enough money to buy anything but choosing to buy nothing. I understand now. He wasn't hoarding wealth. He was waiting for someone who understood what it was really for. Not for Lamborghinis or luxury, not for status or security, but for war. A quiet, careful war against a system that turns people into assets and liabilities, credits and debits, ones and zeros. I'm fighting that war now, one debug at a time, one person at a time, one small victory against a massive system that thinks it can't be beaten. But every system has vulnerabilities. Every code has bugs. And sometimes, the best way to fight a machine is to become a ghost in it. Winters is gone, but his war continues. And I'm going to win it one line of code at a time. I'm Alex Chun. I was a written-off asset, a deleted file, a corrupted program. Now I'm something else, something the system never accounts for. I'm the error message they never see coming.